The Florida Podcast Network, the voice of Florida.
From Mallory Square in Key West to the Governor's Mansion in Tallahassee and all points beyond, you're listening to the Florida Beer Podcast, powered by FloridaBeerBlog.com, your source for all things related to the craft beer community in the Sunshine State. And now your host, Dave Butler.
It looks like it's time for another episode of the Florida Beer Podcast, powered by FloridaBeerBlog.com. This is Dave, your host and author, and we have some fun stuff to do today. We are going to a birthday party. Not just any birthday party. In the past 2 years in North Palm Beach, which is just below the Martin Palm Beach County line, there has been a wonderful brew pub by the name of Stormhouse Brewing. You have had the pleasure of listening to them on the podcast before, where we interviewed the owner and co-founder, Josh Brinzo, and his co-owner, co-founder brother, Christian Brinzo, who heads up the brew system. And you've also heard from their executive chef, Ray, who is literally one of the best brew pub chefs I have ever met in my life, if not chefs just in general. Clearly, they're doing something right because they are about to celebrate their second anniversary. And just like they did with their first anniversary, they're going to be doing it in big beer festival fashion. It looks like there's going to be at least 40 some breweries represented. There will be a number of other manufacturers, food trucks, which is interesting because the menu itself is great, but it doesn't matter. Got all sorts of people from around Palm Beach County, and also a number of craft makers and independent artisans, shall you say. It is going to be a lot of fun. I will be there. I hope that you can as well. But to give you a good flavor for what the event is going to be like, we sat down with Josh Brinzo, who sounded fantastic as he was there at the brewery with his podcast equipment from his show, Locker Room Dads, that he releases on an podcasting app near you. Definitely check that out. And we spoke a little bit about the past 2 years in Stormhouse Brewing's history, what they kind of expected, what they kind of saw, and what's going to be coming up in the future. And then obviously spoke about the event, who is coming to the event, what kind of beers are they bringing, what kind of beers and specials will Stormhouse have, what kind of artisans and people are going to be there, and also the Bush Wildlife Sanctuary, who is going to be there with their animals, and they are also the beneficiary of this year's event. If you've never been, this is probably the best time to go. It is going to be an absolute blast of an event, but enough hearing me try to talk about it. I'd rather have Josh talk about it himself. So here we go with Josh Brinzo, Stormhouse Brewing's second anniversary. Enjoy. So since Stormhouse is coming up on 2 years, has the success of the brewery and the business in general been a surprise, or is this what you were kind of expecting?
I would say that it has been kind of along expectations, though a little hampered because of COVID. I thought maybe, opening and not having to worry about COVID, we'd be more crowded up front, but that just kind of slowed down the tempo up front. But we've done a great job establishing ourselves in the community. And my brother Christian has been obviously brewing our beers. And I've thought he's brought out a nice variety of beers. And that's probably been the one thing that's helped us out the most. I mean, as a brewery, it should be the one thing that helps you out the most. But our food definitely helps us land events. And we have such a large space, so we can share it with everyone. But I mean, when you see the events and how much beer gets poured at them, that really makes you happy. And so you're doing something right. And so going into 2 years, and we're doing all these events, that's like the one thing I'm really, really proud of.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's talk about Christian for a quick moment, because you've had the brew system. You are in sort of an interesting area in that you are in northern Palm Beach County. And as we said when you were on the podcast last time, you do get a very strong influx of snowbirds, which should be leaving if they haven't left already.
Yeah.
With that said, that does kind of dictate a lot of the beer styles that you had started when you first opened up the location. Have you been able to acculturate and educate your year-round drinkers enough to where now Christian is able to start branching out into doing things that when you first opened a few years ago weren't necessarily going to be on the immediate calendar for the foreseeable future?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, with the snowbirds, obviously, they'll come down from wherever they're from. If it's New York, Massachusetts, Connecticut, mainly the Northeast for the most part, in this part of Florida, and they'll tell us, oh, I love this one beer back home. Okay, great. What is it? So, I mean, recently we had a guy in here that told us, oh, I'm from the Boston area, but you guys probably don't make this style here. So, I'm not going to ask. And I was like, well, what kind of beer is it? He told me, and it was a hazy. I was like, that's easy. I was like, well, Pressure Drop, is probably our best selling beer if you'd like to try it. And of course, he ended up loving it because he liked hazies. So I thought that was funny. But after we opened, I know we talked about this the last time I was on, that the IPAs in this area are very popular. So
yeah,
we obviously still have our IPAs. And like one of the beers we're coming out with for the anniversary is a double hazy. I think that'll be a big hit. My brother seems to hit hazies on the head really well. And then, we did Hang Time Pilsner with my friend Pat O'Donnell on the Packers, which I really love. It's got New Zealand hops. It's got great flavor, very unique.
I will say the last time that I was at Stormhouse, which wasn't too long ago, on your recommendation, I did Hang Time as well. And it was absolutely fantastic.
Thank you. Yeah, I love that beer. That beer is great. We did Island Party for the Mardi Gras Festival, which was a fruited Kolsch. And I know that your wife was a fan of that. That beer did very well for us. And
yeah,
I think we've kind of warmed up the community here to fruited beers, because a lot of the snowbirds come in and, they like a Gansett or something, from up there, and they try this. And I'm like, hey, just listen, like, give it a shot. It's not, a 10% DEPA or anything. And then they try it and they're like, oh, that's cool. And then next thing you know, they are ordering, a Doppelbock or something. They like start going crazy. And I love to see that, though, because you kind of reel them in and say, hey, like, beer can be good. It doesn't, just because it's higher in alcohol doesn't mean it has to be this bitter mess of a beer.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And you are absolutely correct with both of those beers. And the fruited Kolsch is just killer. And it was funny because I remember, her concern and my concern is, unfortunately, when you get a fruited beer in most places in Florida, they tend to be sours. They tend to be at least a Berliner Weiss, if not worse. And with this, it was just very simple, almost fruit punchy, but still a recognizably simple, clean beer.
Yeah. And the whole thought process behind it, too, was, it's for Mardi Gras, and Mardi Gras is usually pretty hot. So we want something where people are enjoying it outside and it's crisp, refreshing. And Island Party seemed to fit that role. And I know everyone from the Mardi Gras committee felt that. So that was a really good thing to hear. And sours are great. I love sours. I love a Berliner. It's probably my top 3, favorite beer choices. And I don't know. I don't want to drink multiple Berliners if I'm out in like 100-degree weather. So that wasn't what we were aiming for anyway.
No, I completely agree. And obviously we have to talk about the food, because the food is just, Ray is just absolutely killer.
He is. Ray's great. I have nothing but good things to say about Ray. I love that man.
Has he been able to really sort of expand the menu and start to bring in offerings that he hadn't really anticipated bringing in?
Yes. I want to say it was maybe 8 months in, we did a menu revision. It might have been a little longer in, but it wasn't major or anything, but we kind of like fixed things where we knew maybe they weren't selling or added some things or whatever. And the fun part about having Chef Ray is that he basically has complete control over specials. And so we always get these crazy specials. I mean, the other day he made riceless tuna, like wrapped in cucumber. And I mean, like, you don't get that at a brewery. And it was very good.
No,
and he unfortunately made it for me after I'd already eaten my lunch, so I couldn't finish that. But it was amazing. And doing fun specials like that opens you up to an event like Cinco de Mayo, and you can do a really fun Mexican themed night and have different specials for that. And it's really helpful for all of that, honestly. And even for parties too. When someone comes in and says, I want this, but it's not on your menu. Hey, we could probably work with you. We'll figure it out.
Yeah. Now, some of the other changes that I know that you'd spoken about earlier that I thought was kind of interesting is that you are in the process of putting in a full liquor bar. First and foremost, was that a difficult proposition for a alcohol manufacturing location? Was that, worse than the restaurants that you share a plaza with putting in liquor in their locations?
Well, unfortunately, one of the local businesses in our plaza, Cucina Cabana, recently went out of business. We're great friends with them, and they're the only ones serving liquor. And so I have had the liquor concept up my sleeve since before we opened. I wanted to see how it went. And my idea was to focus on the brewing, which we still obviously do, but I didn't want to take away from that. And I don't think it will, because we get so many customers in here who are with their wife or are just down here on a trip, and they say, hey, I don't want a beer, but do you have rum and Coke, or can I get an old fashioned? And so as we started doing that more and more, I just kind of sat there and said, you know what, I think we can add this effectively without taking away from the beer. And so this past week, we started rolling out a margarita. I came up with the recipe with my cousin. We did a ton of trial runs to come up with the one we liked the most. And we tried to simplify it for our staff, but also you don't need a margarita that's like crazy over the top. It just needs to be good. And if you have the ingredients done right, you can do that. So our whole cocktail menu, I mean, at the end, it'll be like 7 drinks total when we roll it out, but they're all going to be good, solid cocktails. And they're supposed to be the same every time. I don't want there to be any deviation, because you should know what you're getting. You should come out how you expect it, and it should just be good.
Gotcha. Will you be looking at doing special event cocktails like, obviously by the time this gets released, it'll be over, but the Kentucky Derby is coming up. And I would assume that a Pimm's Cup is not a year-round specialty, but could be something that's on the menu. Are you looking at doing things like that?
So if we had not just started, so for everyone listening, this is definitely going to air after the Kentucky Derby, but
yes,
the Kentucky Derby is this week. And I was sitting here going, you know what? I want to do a mint julep. I make a good one. I think it'd be great. It'd be really cool. And I just could not get myself to say, I feel confident enough after just training our staff on this. And we don't even have the full menu. And so, for right now, no, but in the future, 100%, that's our aim. I mean, we're doing food specials. You got to have a drink special. So I'd be happy to come in here and train them. I like making drinks, and I think I make them well. So implement it and have fun with it's great. And at the end of the whole thing, the idea is I want a whiskey list here. It's hard to find a good whiskey bar in Palm Beach County that has stuff that isn't at every other whiskey bar. Gotcha. And my goal is to create something very unique with really cool scotch and bourbon. And you can come in and we can do a beer and bourbon pairing, or a bacon and bourbon, or something fun like that. Cause I want to make it an experience, not just like, oh, they had this, great. Like, I want to make it really fun.
That sounds awesome. And it sounds like it's not an additional separate part of the Stormhouse experience, but something where you're trying to tie it into everything else that they currently have.
Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense. And obviously, the Stormhouse experience has been so good that you are celebrating your 2nd anniversary coming up. This is not the first big anniversary party that you threw, but it's slightly different in that it's, instead of just having a big special at the brewery, you went full on beer festival with it.
Yeah.
Why did you decide to go that route?
So last year, someone asked me, actually, one of the breweries asked me, aren't you afraid of being upstage? Like, why are you hosting a beer fest here? And honestly, I hope we are. like it's our 2-year anniversary, but the whole idea is this is focused on community and showcasing what Florida has to offer. And there are a lot of great breweries. And I hate when people say South Florida has a bad beer scene, because I don't believe that at all. I think maybe you don't see them, up in the Northeast on shelves up there, but South Florida has a very good beer scene, and it is very easy to showcase what we have here. So doing a beer fest here seemed to be a no-brainer. I mean, last year we had such a good turnout. It was really hot. So we learned a lot on how to help spread everything out and create some shade and cool things off. But I mean, we have a great turnout. I mean, I think we're at 25 plus breweries right now, and we're waiting on some other confirmations with the other events going on around this month. But I mean, it should be fun. But we also add in this year, we're having a couple food trucks. We have a bunch of other vendors that are going to be here that are local. We have a golf ball company that'll be doing a putting green. We have this guy with a little Japanese truck that does kombuchas and stuff. And it should just be a lot of fun.
Okay, so let's actually start with that, the alternative, because it isn't just a beer festival, but you have a full, I guess, craft fair would be the right way to phrase this. Did not realize that a putting green was going to be coming on there, though. That's actually pretty cool. What other kinds of, I guess, stores, pop-ups are you going to be looking at bringing on and inviting?
Yeah, so we do have actually Sabe is a craft cocktail brand, canned cocktails. They will be here. I think that's a cool one to have just in addition to everything. And we have a kombucha person. We have Jupiter Rum Co. and Atoll Vodka. Okay. And then I'm trying to get a coffee brand out here. I'm just waiting for the final confirmation. But then first off, this all benefits Bush Wildlife. Last year it was Loggerhead Marine Life. So Bush Wildlife Sanctuary for Animal Rescue. They're awesome. And so all these people are going to be out here basically just to spread their brand, which is great. But we have a golf ball company called Buckets Golf. We have a guy that does fishing lures. We have cookies. There's a person that makes hot sauce from scratch. And it's amazing, by the way. There's soap, there's art. I mean, all sorts of good stuff. The guy that does kombucha out of the truck is going to be selling his own stuff and sampling and whatever. And then there's apparel. So it's just a cool way to get the whole community together, and it's all family friendly. And I mean, we have a face painter coming that my 2-year-old daughter loves. People with kids can be like, hey, let's go get your face painted. And it won't take 20 minutes. It's actually really fast, but it's good for the kids. And, you get out there and just everyone's having a good time.
Awesome. That's amazing. That's definitely something to look forward to. In terms of the breweries that are coming, who can you say that is definitely coming?
Okay.
And do you know if anything special is coming from them?
Yes and no. I could confirm Orchestrated isn't actually going to be here, but they will be giving us some cool stuff to pour for them. So we're going to have some pouring for them. Last year, they brought some really great stuff. Kelsey City, Side Door, Nobo, Hop Life, Twisted Trunk, Bay 13. We have a collab actually with Bay 13 we did. That's releasing. Coastal Karma, The Tank, Orchestrated Minds, Black Flamingo, Fraser Creek, Grand Central, Walking Tree, Wynwood, American Icon, Sailfish, Magic 13, Uncommon Path, Prosperity, Ocean Republic, Dixie Bar and Grill, and If I Brewed the World. So we're just waiting on confirmation on a few others, but I mean, that's a pretty good list and some really different styles between all those as well. So I like that. It helps spread it out and have a diverse portfolio for the event, but it should be good.
No, absolutely. It seems to be relatively local, kind of how you mentioned South Florida and wanting to celebrate that beer scene. It looks like from at least the Tri-County area, kind of being at the north of it as you are, there's a good spread of a lot of people, which is fantastic. And one of the things that I'm interested in is you said that you did a collaboration with Bay 13 down in Coral Gables, which is funny because they actually just had a beer festival at their location that I know that you were at. How did that partnership kind of go with their head brewmaster and Christian? And do you know what kind of beer that's going to be?
Yes, I do. So I'll start with that. It's an Australian extra pale because they are an Aussie theme kind of going on at Bay 13 with their ownership. So that was kind of how we felt would be a good way to do it. So Greg came up here, brewed with my brother. Greg is the master brewer at Bay 13. He's one of the nicest people I've probably ever met in my life.
I was always told to look for the homeless looking guy.
He is awesome. And I mean, listen, I want to give a shout out to Bay 13 too, because they deserve it. Their beer fest was probably the best beer fest I've ever been to. Yeah, it wasn't really massive, but first off, the live music that they had was insane. It was so good. But the food that they did inside was unreal. And they took care of all the breweries so well. And I know that last year, like, we were running food to all the breweries and making sure they got all food on us. I know that they told us that meant a lot to them. So when Greg was asking me about doing this event, told him some of the stuff we did. And I was like, well, we didn't do the food that good. I mean, their food was insane. They had a chef come in, I had lamb chops. It was awesome. So that was really, really cool. So Bay 13 did it great. I mean, I can't shout them out enough, but there's such a good brewery in the area. And I feel like they're kind of like a sister brewery to us and how they do this.
Okay, that's awesome. Now, in terms of specials from you, both food and beer, is there anything that Ray and Christian have been working on that they're going to be premiering at the event?
Yeah, so I do want to preface it with, since we are just rolling out our liquor stuff, our focus is the beer for the day. So we will not be serving liquor at our anniversary, but that was kind of just to make sure the process of everything was sped up and there weren't long waits. But we do have a double hazy coming out. We have a really crazy champagne beer coming out that I really can't wait. Yeah, Chris said it should be around 12%. So,
oh my goodness.
Really excited to try that. And just like last year, he had a couple sours. So he's trying to get those out just in time and try to figure out how he wants them to come out. But those are kind of in the pipeline there. The food side, we'll do an abbreviated menu for the day, again, to speed it up. But you'll be able to get all your favorites. I mean, the pretzel, obviously, everyone loves it. Pierogies or wings, couple burgers, sandwich, bratwurst. So, I mean, it's a good spread of everything where we're covering everyone's favorites. And then we should have some really cool beers. And the one thing I haven't even mentioned is that instead of just us pouring, 2 to 4 beers outside, we're going to allow everyone to come in and also sample from all of our beers.
Wow. That's impressive.
Which I think is a cool, unique way to do it. So we'd like to get people to come in, go up to the bar and sample, whatever.
That's impressive. So how much does all of this cost? Where can you get tickets? What's the parking situation going to be like? What are the nitty gritty details?
Yeah. So tickets are $45. You get a nice glass sampler that looks like a can. It's got our 2-year anniversary logo benefiting Bush Wildlife. So it's got a bird on it. Really cool. And then it's unlimited pouring, which is always great. No tickets. And then parking's pretty straightforward. We'll have it all marked off. There's plenty of parking around our plaza and then behind it in the parking garage. So that shouldn't be an issue. And that'll all be marked off. But I mean, $45 gets you all that. And if you want to just show up and not drink and shop some vendors or take your kid to get their face painted or possibly throw axes if we have our axe throwing place here. Yeah, I mean, you're welcome to partake in everything.
That's awesome. It sounds like a fantastic time. I definitely cannot wait to be there.
Oh, we're excited to have everyone out here. It's all for the community, and the community is what makes us. So it's just one way we can give back.
So yes, there are going to be a number of awesome people that are there. Never people that have been on the podcast before. It's great to see If I Brewed the World there. It's great to see Walking Tree is going to be there. Great to see The Tank. They're good friends of ours. And some people that are going to be on the podcast very soon, but you have not heard from just yet, such as Magic 13. Definitely be excited for them. But I'm there for Stormhouse. And Stormhouse is going to definitely represent. Very, very excited to try everything that they have coming up. Remember, the event is on May 21st. Tickets are available on Eventbrite, but if you go to Stormhouse Brewing on Instagram or their website, you'll be able to find out that information very, very easily. Next week, we are going back down to Miami as promised. This should be a fun little jaunt down there. In the meantime, make sure to check us out on social media at Florida Beer Blog on Instagram and Twitter, FL Beer Blog on Facebook, on the interwebs at floridabeerblog.com, floridabeerpodcast.com, and FloridaPodcastNetwork.com, as we are a proud member of the Florida Podcast Network family. And if you head to FloridaPodcastNetwork.com, you will get all the information that you need for all the new shows that are coming down the pipeline. There's a lot of great stuff that is on there, and hopefully I can get some of them to come to the event too. If you want to reach out to us, the best way to do that is floridabeerblog@gmail.com. Our intro announcer is Jeff Brozovich. Field producer is Steve Pekala. Executive producer for the Florida Podcast Network and Grand High Poobah is Jemmy Legagneur. This is David Butler, your host and author. Thank you so much for listening. We will see you next week, and we will see you at Stormhouse Brewing on May 21st for their second anniversary. Thank you so much for listening. We'll talk to you soon. And drink Florida craft.